Welcome to Overtime, everyone, on Nittany Game Week. I'm Todd Sadowski. We got Jay Paterno. We got Andrew Callista sitting in this week with us. You know, Andrew's in here for several reasons. One, we were on the trip together to Columbus, so we're going to talk a little bit about the Nittany Lions and the Buckeyes. And this week, we've got a Schuylkill County native as our impact interview. And there's one thing that Andrew Callista wears with pride. It's his Schuylkill County heritage. And so Coach Mike Rhodes, the men's basketball coach, is going to be our impact interview guest on Nittany Game Week. So we can't wait to talk to him about the new season for that. But first and foremost, we're going to talk about the Ohio State game. And let me preface the conversation by saying when they win big, we don't just effusive praise over everything, right? You got to dissect it a little bit. You can talk about things that you did really well and then some room for improvement. Same thing happens with a loss, and it is just one loss. It doesn't feel that way because it happened again to Ohio State in a strange way, in a sense of it was close or could have been close. So we just want to preface the conversation and say, look, there were some issues. We got to discuss those before you move on to Indiana and to Maryland. So first and foremost, no time to panic. But offensively against Ohio State, there were some real questions about what they did with the game plan, how it was executed. Obviously was a big deal. And as Coach Franklin mentioned a lot in his Tuesday press conference, third downs just destroyed them and really eliminated any kind of flow of anything that you could do, Jay, offensively, be it extra packages, be it other plays, that type of stuff.
Well, I think the one thing is the perception that there was a lot of third and longs is not accurate. 8 of the 16 third downs and the fourth downs, 8 of those were 3 or less, and you made one of them. You know, one of those, and you got to make those. Those are the ones you have to make. The third and 30s, third and 12s, third and 14s, those are tough to make, but the ones that you got to make are those ones that are manageable. You get yourself in good position, and they didn't get done. They didn't get the explosive plays. Part of that is Penn State has not been getting those explosive plays all year. And Ohio State tackles, we talked about in the scouting report, they tackled really, really well in the secondary.
Andrew, you were field level for the whole game. So your impressions, especially on the third down and, the things that popped out at you as you were shooting and watching
Well, I think
the
what
game.
goes to some of the feel and the impressions when people are saying about third and longs and things like that, I think what they forget is like the third and one, and what makes people really angry that notice it is on that third and one, a couple of possessions before, you just had Nick Singleton rip off a 20-yard run, which I think is his longest run of the year, and then a 16-yard run right after that. And he's getting up, and he has all the swagger in the world after ripping off 2 big runs. And then on that third and one, he doesn't get the carry. Now, I'm not sure what look it got because I'm looking through the camera lens down there. But at third and one, we've talked about the offensive line off-season. It got effusive praise about how the offensive line was going to be a strength. Hasn't really turned out to be that way. But at third and one in this type of game, you got to think your receivers are struggling to get open. We need to power the football. And in my opinion, I thought that should have been a straight give. And I felt a lot of wind come out of the sidelines on that. It just felt that way.
Well, look, Andrew's worked at radio up in State College before he came with us at Fox 43 and dealt with immediate reaction, right, to fans after the game. And obviously you're upset, you're frustrated over a couple things. A couple things that stand out to me when you have a football team is I'm big into messaging, okay? And you have an early third and one. If you said to your team, your identity is to run the football, then you've basically got 2 cracks at it, potentially, if you decide to even go for it on fourth down. But you just say to them, you're better than their defensive line, go out and prove it, and you run the ball. I'm not saying straight ahead necessarily, but whatever. You go run the ball and try and accent that particular strength. The other part of it is a decision that came up later, Jay, that we've discussed for weeks, that there's going to be a field position decision to be made that comes up 8.5 minutes left in the game, whatever the exact total is, where it's fourth down and Coach Franklin decides it's time to be aggressive at this particular time. We may not get the ball back, whatever his reasoning is behind it. I just felt like, no, your messaging is to the defense, and whether you go over personally and say to the defense, we're punting this ball because you're going to get it back for us immediately so we can go win this game. I'm just big into messaging like that, how you present messages to your team. And I don't think they got the right message to the players, and it didn't work out, obviously, play-wise. Sometimes decisions don't work out.
Well, I think to look at the positive side, for all the criticism of the offense and criticism of the game plan, until that moment, that 4th and 3, Ohio State's average starting field position was their own 22-yard line. They had done a great job in terms of managing field position, not turning the ball over, protecting their defense. That's a situation where your punter was actually having a good day. You punt them down. Your defense, Ohio State was not running the ball very effectively, so you're going to force them to take some chances throwing the ball or run 3 times, give the ball back. But again, it's one of those things. If you make that and you go down and drive, everybody goes, "Oh, great job! You're the greatest." And if you don't make it, people criticize you. But up until that point, even with the third down problems, even with all those things going on, they were in a position to win the game in the fourth quarter with, I think it was 7.5 minutes to go, whatever it was. So I understand a little bit, but again, that's a field position call. You got all the confidence in the world in your defense. I mean, they were playing a really good defensive game. You probably punt them down and see what happens.
Yeah, make him work with the long field. In my estimation, I just felt like that was one of the decisions that if he had it back, he might change that, especially based on the fact you were 0 for at that point, even on third down. So why would you think, okay, all of a sudden you're going to make it on fourth?
And I have the feeling that if they do punt it down at the end of the first half, and I know it's a completely different situation, but Ohio State left the field to boos by their fans because Ryan Day went really conservative, and I get that. That's a completely different situation than under 7 minutes in the fourth quarter. But I got the feeling that Ryan Day really trusted his defense. So how aggressive was he going to be? Was he even going to drop Kyle McCord back? Because Penn State's defensive line was getting pressure. I think it was Zane Durant had the big hit, on the run that was like shocking to me. It was like right in front of me. I was like, "Whoa, that's a monster hit right there to start the fourth quarter."
Old
so
school Big Ten
that's
football.
what I thought. So I would have thought the feel of that game, and based on what the game Ryan Day was calling, that Penn State would have been getting that ball back.
I think that's a great point. And I want to move and segue to the defense with that point, Andrew, to say how conservative was Ryan Day going to be, especially considering what Curtis Jacobs did early in the game. And I've said this time and time again, it's a shame that, there was a, pass interference call on the play. And I'm not saying it wasn't legit. It looked certainly legit. It's just a shame because Curtis Jacobs made what could have been potentially one of the all-time great plays in this rivalry, even if it came in the first half. But that play, whether it counted or not, was in the minds of the Buckeyes. And the defense for Manny Diaz, we were talking to Kobe King afterwards, they're not there to just get the other team off the field. They're there to make a play. And that's what Curtis Jacobs did on that particular part of it. And Jay, as to Andrew's point, as a play caller in a tight game like that, how aggressive is Ryan Day going to get when they have to go up against the long field, knowing that the defense has kept Penn State's offense to 0 for 14 or 0 for whatever it was on third downs at that particular time?
I think right now, if you look at the Big Ten, the guy who might be doing the best job coaching right now is Ryan Day, because he's been a guy who wants to score 50 points a game. He's been that, let's go and take chances and all that kind of stuff. And he's transitioned into a guy who's comfortable playing the way he played Saturday, and I can win the game lean. He's an offensive-minded coach, but he's trusting his defense. So I think that really shows, his ability to channel his inner Jim Tressel, whatever you want to say. But I think that spoke volumes. But again, those are the kind of plays that, and look, I'm not going to sit here and the holding call on King was legit. I mean, there's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And if he doesn't hold him, McCord may have thrown that ball out of there before it happened. But be that as it may, I think both of these, Ryan Day and was certainly not going to take a lot of chances, as evidenced by where they were throwing the ball and the things they were doing. They were not going to take chances and give Penn State a chance to win.
Well, yeah, and I think to further, more evidence that he's not going to take a chance is Penn State's goal line stand in the third quarter. I mean, Penn State's, outside of a few plays that Ohio State broke loose on, I'm discounting the one after going forward on fourth down, because the defense has been getting pounded on, and they stood up to it multiple times. That one, you're finally setting up Ohio State in a great spot to go for a kill shot, and Marvin Harrison was going to get one that kind of like broke it, and he did. That being said, I compared to last year's game, when every single time C.J. Stroud dropped back to pass, I was worried Marvin Harrison was going to take one to the house. I never felt that. So he may have had 11 catches for 160 yards or whatever the stat line was. At no point that I thought that he was going to change the game right off the bat. And three of the catches came, I think, early on in the game. So it was 8 catches the rest of the game. I mean, that was just my feel of it. And Penn State's defense kept coming up. If you punt them deep again, I just got to think that something's in the back of Kyle McCord's head. He's not going to try to force one in there or squeeze it. There's going to be a throwaway. There's going to be a run play. You're looking at a 3rd and long at some point and like that. And Ohio State's going to look to get off the field and say to Penn State, drive 60 yards in 4.5 minutes.
And look, I understand fans' frustrations.
Yep.
Ohio State's missing 2 running backs. They're missing their best corner. They're missing Ibuka. I mean, this game was there for the taking. And, at the end of the day, you got to tip your hat to the other guys and say, you know what, they played really, really well. And you have to also admit that Penn State did a lot of things really, really well on Saturday. It's a really good football team in a very hostile environment. A quarterback who's making his first start in a really tough environment. His first time he really faced adversity in terms of having to be behind and try and make a play, and he'll grow from it. This team will grow from it.
One of the things I'm not a big fan of is the all is lost, the season is lost mentality. They do have Michigan coming to their house, and guess what? All the frustrated fans can have an impact in that game, show up and make it really difficult on J.J. McCarthy and all that type of deal. Not going to take you down this road because it's a difficult road to take you, but we'll talk about the fact that the overall record for Coach Franklin and his staff through the years is not great against top 10 teams, top 5, road teams, top 25 ranked, all those types of things. And it is what it is. I mean, and he didn't shy away from it on Tuesday. He said, look, all accountability for myself and the staff. He didn't want to talk about it after the game Saturday, which was fine too. He took a couple days to reflect on that part of it. However, at some point, the coaching staff, the coaches, you have to step up and win a game that you're not necessarily favored to win, whether it's UVA versus UNC this past weekend. Kirk Ferentz's record is 12-24 in that situation. Jeff Brom, your favorite as far as bringing up like really big wins, 3-5 in situations against top 5 teams. So that's where the frustration lies, is it seems like we're close. The roster is close. Is exactly the same? I don't know. But there's situations where can't we just pull it out in one of these situations in Columbus or at home? Because it's been 7 straight years now.
Well, I think it's kind of like how the losses are accumulating. And I got multiple text messages after the game. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of this. Every single year, it's a wash, rinse, repeat. Play them close for 3 quarters, 3.5 quarters, and then lose by 2 touchdowns at the end of the game. And I understand that frustration. I also understand people that are like, this is the year we're the closest to Ohio State we've ever been. I would actually argue a 15-point lead to start the 4th quarter on the road in the Horseshoe is actually a better situation than any other situation that has happened since. Winning by 12 with 8 minutes to go at home at Beaver Stadium is a better situation than any other situation since then. So the rosters may be there, but at least the top-level talent is definitely not there, especially on the outside. So, and I think that's what's frustrating for the fans is you've had those leads, that 15-point lead. Forget NIL, forget facilities, forget all that. You win that game on the road in 2017 and be able to manage that game to an end. It's a completely different world in the Big Ten. Same thing. You have Ohio State at home in 2018 with Trace McSorley, possibly one of the best ever football players and just a pure gamer at home. In the game he played in 2018, I think we're all impressed. In 2018, we're all impressed with that. So that's possibly 3 straight wins, and we're looking at a totally different dynamic and perception. But blow a double-digit lead. Close but no cigar in 2019. 2020 we throw it away, and then it's just 2022 same thing. 2023 close, no cigar. And I think that's what builds up the frustration, because it's when is a wrench going to be thrown in there to see something different?
Well, I'll take you back to 2007. So 2007, we lost to Michigan on the road, lost to Ohio State, and Rodriguez got hired at Michigan, and it's going to be a Rodriguez-Tressel league, Rodriguez-Tressel, and it was going to be, these are the 2 programs. And Joe really made a commitment, and we really made a commitment that we were not going to let that happen. And in 2008, we win the Big Ten. 2009, I think Ohio State won it. 10, I can't remember. I think Ohio State may have won it. 11, we were on our way to winning it before some things happened, obviously. But if you look at that stretch, we beat Ohio State twice in Columbus, and we swept Michigan 3 years in a row because we made a commitment. This was our laser focus. But there's a fine line. There's a difference between focus and obsession. And I think we've got to make sure that this doesn't become obsession with our fan base and with the program as opposed to laser focus. Because when you look at what I know what Urban Meyer did when he got to Ohio State, they basically said, we're going to work on Michigan every day of the year. We're going to take a 10-minute period in practice, spring practice. Could be playing, San Diego State. They would have what they call a Teton period, the team up north, because they won't say it. But they would take 10 minutes. So it wasn't an obsession, but it was a laser focus that this is coming and this is what's important. I'm not saying Penn State needs to do that, but I think they're there. They're right there.
Can I just, from the fans' point of view, I think that without beating Ohio State or Michigan, it's just you're constantly going to be fighting those ghosts, just from the fans' perception. And whether that's fair to the staff or not, until the Penn State fan base sees a win against Ohio State or a win against Michigan, that's the only thing that's going to cure
the
some
record
of these
against
things.
Michigan isn't so awful. I mean, the last couple of years haven't worked out, but 3-3 again in the last 6 type of deal. But you're right about Ohio State.
But they're a top team, as long as they're a top team.
But here's the difference, and I want to finish on this point so we can move forward, and then to some fan questions, because we got a lot of fan questions, which we really, really appreciate. I think what I want to say is we're going to really find out next year. The one thing that hasn't happened is there hasn't been a lot of top 25 teams in the Big Ten. The Big Ten has been very, very different, where you've got basically Ohio State or Michigan that's on your radar. Michigan State has fallen off in the last couple of years. So you don't really have like Michigan's left on the schedule, and that's it as far as a top 25 opponent. So, of course, you're going to look at that particular opponent and judge the staff on that. And a lot of people think they're the number 1 team in the country. Well, if you're facing the number 3 and the number 1 team in the country, there's not a lot of 15s that you're facing. So, he's getting good, solid bowl wins and against a team like Utah. Solid victory there. So, to be fair, I think next year will be a better year to judge on overall how you manage a schedule, how you get through it. You got USC, you got a UCLA that's on the schedule. You got a Washington, you're going to have Wisconsin. Who knows where they're going to be? So maybe you got 4 or 5 or 6 top 25 opponents, which, Jay, your staff was used to facing 3 or 4 or 5 top 25 teams as opposed to just a couple, and those 2 teams being absolute elite top level that are fighting for a national championship type squad. So, okay, let's move on to moving forward, which is Indiana, first and foremost, and then Maryland before you even get to Michigan. So
the sun came up Sunday morning.
Yes, it did.
Which surprised me.
Quickly, the message to the players, guys, let's forget it. Let's go.
Well, I've been there. I mean, we went out in 2008 and lost to Iowa, a game we shouldn't have lost, and we came back, played Indiana, won the rest of the games, and won the Big Ten. 2005, same thing. We lost to Michigan on some calls, put extra time on the clock. But you know what? At the end of the day, you got to wake up the next morning, move on, and go play the next game. And we won the Big Ten. 99, we lost to Minnesota, a game we shouldn't have lost. And that team was, with LeVar Arrington and Brandon Short and Courtney Brown, those guys, we lost the next 2. So it's got to be, you got to get to that, this is over, bury it, move on, and build off it, and because there's still a lot that could happen.
All right, so we're going to go to fan questions now. We got 3 of them we want to fire at you. The first one is from Chris from Facebook. It came in. Number 9 should get a chance. I believe he's a faster runner. Would that help the offense? Note Ohio State did that with Devin Brown in short yardage inside the 10 before he got injured. So, Andrew, you actually asked the question of Coach Franklin afterwards about potentially Bo Prabula being used. We had heard there was a package and that type of deal. Would he have seen the field? So your thoughts on this one?
Earlier on in the year, Coach Franklin in the post-game presser said, that's something that we've put on film and teams are going to have to prepare for it. So you kind of expect to see a wrinkle here and there, especially when you essentially have 3 weeks to prepare for this Ohio State defense. I thought, based on the struggles that we've seen when I watched the games from up top with wide receivers struggling to get open, I thought it would have been a wrinkle to see Bo Prabula. Obviously, that isn't the case. Coach Franklin took my question, and I misphrased it. That seems to be a theme right now with misphrasing questions, asking about some offensive things. He kind of took it as inserting Bo in there to, remove Drew. I wasn't asking it that way, but I just thought, if you're going to throw some halfback passes, there's a pretty athletic quarterback over there that could be split out, and just all eyes are going to look on him like, hey, what's getting in? It just adds a little bit different wrinkle to it. So I was a little bit surprised that we did not see a package from Bo Prabula at some point in the game, whether it be the second quarter, third quarter, early on, much like we have seen Tommy Stevens.
Well, I think when you do that, because we did it. We've done it over the years. Did it with Darrell Clark in a bowl game, and Morelli stayed in the game and went out and played wide out and blocked and he was one of the first guys to run over to Darrell when he scored. I mean, it became. But how you present it to a guy like Drew Allar, who coming off a tough game, I think that's the most important thing. Is that you say, look, this is augment the offense. This is not we don't have faith in you. This is, hey, on 3rd and 1, he's got a skill set that you don't have. I mean, I don't think anybody can argue that. That you don't have. And this is, like I said, Ohio State did it with Devin Brown. If he doesn't get hurt, they probably run different plays on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1. So could it happen? Yeah, but it's got to be managed the right way internally.
2 things about that real quick. One is you should be using Aller, who is a little bit more mobile than people think as far as being able to get yards. And there were several situations he could have tucked it under and got 4 or 5, 6 yards, maybe converted a first down here or there. So that message could have got to him that, hey, yes, if nothing's there, but you see an open field, they're playing man, whatever it may be, go get those 8 yards, 9 yards, 10 yards. The second is that it's just disappointing that it didn't happen in the second half. If the success isn't there in the first half, that's the time to find out what you can do in the second half to do something different. And the second half offense got worse than it was in the first half. And look, and you could tell by that time Drew was a little shaky with his performance and his execution, because you can look at the film. He just didn't have a solid effort, a lot of incompletions that could have been cleaned up. And that's okay. He's going to get better in those situations. But it was disappointing to not see him
just
at all.
defend the staff in a decision on one thing. Coach Franklin did reference it was a one-possession game. It is kind of tough, like if you're not comfortable doing that, because a mistake comes in, and we saw it with Tommy Stevens. I referenced it where it was a drive killer because it ended up being a 13-yard loss at home in Beaver Stadium on some trickeration play. So I absolutely understand it. If they're not comfortable with it, then that's something that has to be addressed, and he has to be.
If you're willing to do trick plays, though, you should be willing to actually step up and do a package like that.
I think as long as you do it during the week and say, look, guys, there's going to be a point in the game we insert Bo into the game to do this or that. These, just like I said, like Devin Brown did for Ohio State. Everybody knew he was coming in. So it's not like, hey, what's going on? Why'd they pull him? It doesn't look like you're pulling someone.
A little something extra to think about, whatever it may be. The other part is the trick play.
You got to prepare for it.
After the 2 plays to the tight ends, and I'd mentioned like just after the first quarter, the wide receiver disconnect, go to the tight ends and running backs. You'll probably see them do that. 2 straight plays to the tight end. They went to the trick play. And it didn't even look like the wide receivers were ready for the pass to come their way. They were run blocking down the field. So, something got messed up in the communication part of it. It is what it is. All right. Speaking of communication, stealing signs. That seems to be a topic these days within the Big Ten. This question comes from Joan. Can you explain this Michigan sign stealing situation? My husband played college baseball in a few years in the minor leagues. He says that sign stealing is part of the game. What are your thoughts, Jay Paterno?
Well, he's talking baseball, not football, but let's get to it. So, look, the guys that are running no-huddle offenses, they're doing it to gain an advantage. You don't get anything for nothing. So on the flip side, if you're gonna take that risk, there's an opportunity cost. People are going to steal your signals. Now, if Michigan was scouting, on the road, which you're not supposed to do, it's an NCAA rule, then that's a different argument. But in terms of just sign stealing, that's part of the game. I was a GA at Virginia in 1992. Florida State was running all no-huddle. 4 or 5 weeks before we played, I'm watching a TV game, and I go, oh, okay. And I'm watching Charlie Ward do the signals. This was the screen pass. This was the draw play. I kid you not. This was the wheel route. I still know him. So I started watching the game, and I'm going, holy cow. So the next 4 or 5 weeks, we got their TV tapes and started to confirm that this was what was going on. And by the time we played them, 2 drives into the game, we realized they hadn't changed their signals. We literally were signaling in defenses and calling plays out and saying, this is what's coming. We held them. They averaged 37 points a game that year. We held them to 13. They scored on 2 essentially fluke plays, and we lost 13-3. Obviously, we unfortunately didn't have their defensive signals, but we might have won the game, but they were number 6 in the country. But, I mean, yeah, it goes on. That's part of the game. And, look, if you don't like your signs being stolen, you got to change them. And in this environment where guys are changing teams, players, coaches, analysts, if you don't think somebody has your signals, then you're a fool. Yeah, that stuff gets all.
Coach Prime has weighed in on this, and I think he's pretty much been.
Still got to stop him.
That's right. You still got to stop him.
First sign indicator, second sign
we knew what play was coming. He scrambled and
him.
Went 40 yards for a touchdown. That's how they beat us. So.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to the third and final question. Assisting a runner. This one comes from William Lewis. Do you think the NCAA will reverse this crazy rule, he asks, question mark. Now the players are pushing and pulling. Well, we've seen the Eagles in the NFL. That's unstoppable. The tush push, whatever. The
city of brotherly shove.
The city of brotherly shove. That play's unstoppable. Minnesota tried it, couldn't run it the same way. I mean, the way Philly does it, it's a big rugby scrum that they move on forward. So
Steelers did it too.
I think it's stupid. Like the Steelers did it very badly. Eli Manning and Kenny Pickett are the only 2 quarterbacks I saw that floating around that would get that spot on that play. But I don't like it. I think it should go back to like when Reggie Bush pushed Matt Leinart into the end zone against Notre Dame. That was supposed to be illegal at the time in 2005, so they've changed it. They've gone back through. Maybe the tush push is some other technicality that it's legal or they've just gone away from the rule. But I don't think you should just be able to come up and just push the runner forward. I get it
agree.
when somebody stand up, because if you're going to talk about safety and you're going to preach this and you're going to kneecap the defense on what they're able to do and everything like that, and then you're going to allow a defender in all essential to stand up on opposing back or quarterback and then have somebody come up and just come flying in and push out, pile forward. It's truly a safety issue if you really wanted to get down to it, and that's what is preached. It's never enforced, and it's always against the defense.
Well, Fred Warner jumped over the top against the Vikings and stopped Kirk Cousins from doing it, and so defenses are going to find some creative ways to try and do that.
Can you do that in the NCAA? I mean, there's so many penalties. We've seen leaping. We've seen,
but no, but you can do that in the end. You can do that then.
Well,
but
you get Skip LeVar back. He'll jump over and get him.
It's a safety issue. I mean, it's that's not football. I mean, that's an old rugby scrum and whatever. But it's, to me, get out of there. And if you're good enough up front, you're good enough up front.
All right. Well, there you have it. We had
I'm
a lot of fun.
an offensive guy saying that, by the way.
That's right. So we had a lot of fun with it. Again, we preface the conversation. We end the conversation the same way. It's one loss. You dissect losses a little bit. You dive a little deeper than you do for a victory. We expect them to get right back at it against Indiana and then Maryland, and hopefully it sets up a really big matchup with the Wolverines coming up in mid-November. So we'll see how it goes. Looking forward to this week's Nittany Game Week. We appreciate it again. Coach Mike Rhodes is our Impact interview guest. Head men's basketball coach at Penn State, Jay Paterno, and Andrew Callista in this week's Overtime. I'm Todd Sadowski. Thanks for watching.